Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Early Edge. My name is Sia Nejad, otherwise known as the Counselor of Cash. And ladies and gentlemen, we didn't win you a ton of cash over the weekend. Let's take a look at the recap screen before we have a loaded Monday Night Football and NBA show, 8-13. I mean, shout out to Chip Patterson, who goes 3-0 in college football, but he was really the only star of the show. Buckets goes 1 for 2 and hits a plus 145. I go 1 and 2, which isn't very good, but at least I hit a plus 190. But you can see here, NFL did not go well for us, and that's certainly me included. Got a lot of people in the chat. They're waiting for a good recap screen. Some good picks, some Monday Night Football, and a lot of NBA right here on a Monday. Let's bring in the stars of the show because you're going to love this cast. We got Mike McClure. We got Larry Hartstein. We got PropStarz, and we've got Mikey B. I don't know where to start. Mike McClure, I'm going to start with you because I always like to get some NFL reaction from Sunday. And obviously the Broncos beating the Chiefs was a bit of an upset pre-show. We were talking about how the Chiefs are minus 220 still to make the playoffs. Your reaction to that game yesterday, and are you worried about your Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be worried at this point. There's no room for error going forward. I do think it still sets up relatively okay for them. And what I mean by that is they're still, 8th place in the AFC right now, battling with teams like the Houston Texans, Jacksonville Jaguars, the Chargers, who are ahead of them currently, but they still get head-to-heads there. They've got an absolute must-win game coming up. Credit to the Denver Broncos defensively. They continue to do what they do. I thought Kansas City at times, particularly Travis Kelce, looked pretty good in that game. Just came down to the way it kind of shook out. That missed extra point was absolutely critical in the way that game played out, in my opinion. But yeah, I think that they probably sneak in via the wild card, but no room for error left.
That's true. Not much room for error left. Let's see. There was somebody in the chat that had a comment about this subject. Larry, your response to Sunday in general, or if you wanted to comment on the Chiefs.
Yeah, well, they're still minus 220 to make the playoffs, which is kind of interesting given their situation, and the schedule is not a cupcake. Bo Nix is 12-2 at home. He deserves some credit for that big throw he made late to Cortland Sutton getting out of the pocket. I mean, that was the best of Bo Nix, but Mike is right. That game is totally different if the Chiefs convert that extra point and force Denver to have to score a touchdown down 20-16. But I want to talk about the game of the day, which was Seahawks-Rams. And as bad as Sam Darnold was, and he was horrible, and now we've seen 3 games, in big spots where when the pressure gets to him, he was not able to throw the ball to his own team. But they still were right there. So that's what kind of gives you hope if you're a Seahawks fan. 4 picks, most of them horrible picks on Sam Darnold, and they still had a chance to win. So that was kind of impressive to see. And the Eagles, again, winning with an incredible defensive performance, and the offense is still non-existent under 4 yards of play.
Proppy, I know you have some follow-up. Gipper's picks in the chat. It says Valentina, I guess that would be Shevchenko, like he said. So good call from Gipper's picks, and so many of you so smart in the chat there. There's Danny Brasco in the chat as well. Proppy, I know you had some follow-up.
Defense was on the menu certainly last night at Lincoln Financial Field.
I knew this was coming.
The Vic Fangio-led defense looks a lot better coming out of the bye. The addition of Jalen Phillips, Michael Carter Jr. in the slot, moving Cooper DeJean to outside cornerback. So seeing this defense, they certainly look like one half potential Super Bowl contender. But as Larry mentioned, the offense sputters, continues. Saquon Barkley inefficient. Jalen Hurts not able to throw the ball down the field. Really much accuracy there either. So a lot of things to be hopeful and bullish about as far as the Eagles are concerned. But offensively, is still a lot of work to do under this Kevin Patullo offense.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to get to some picks. Mikey B, I know you've got, just so we know, just to set the table, because Proppy has an NBA pick. You've got NBA picks today as well, right?
Oh, yeah. We still got some fun games tonight. I'm going to got 2 picks from the same game. So you only got to put 1 on and dial in.
All right, we're going to get to some Monday Night Football. Then we're going to toggle back and forth between football and the NBA. If you have questions, whether they're NBA or Monday Night Football related, get them in the chat right now. We will answer those questions. Prop related, game related, you name it. We've got it for you. Mike McClure, we're always waiting for potentially a first quarter or first half bet coming from you. What's on the menu?
I like the Raiders early in this game. First half over 10.5. I like their path to 13 in this opening half. We've talked about Dallas all year, and it is true that the Dallas Cowboys break in the new defense tonight. Now, the question is it impactful immediately or not? I think it may take a game or two to really show a big difference. But when you look at how you beat Dallas, it's throwing the football. It's not necessarily running the ball with Ashton Genty. I like this group for the Raiders here. Anytime you've got Brock Bowers on the field, I think it changes things offensively. I like having both tight ends out there. I like the fact that it's in a dome in a controlled environment, and I like the fact that the Cowboys are very likely to be scoring, putting the Raiders team in one of these situations where they are just simply throwing the football again and again. Yes, I see in the comments it was painful on the 7.5 loss last week. They get the early touchdown. Didn't work out for the Raiders there, but the fact is they scored a touchdown in the first half. They moved the football well. This is an easier task defensively tonight. It's a home game for them. I like this number here going over 10.5 minus 105. Again, looking for that touchdown and 2 field goals or 2 touchdowns. I think it's a spot where the Raiders, again, come out throwing early, and I think we put points on the board in the first half.
All right. We got Raiders first half team total over 10.5. I have a bet that implicates the first half more on the Cowboys end, but certainly fits fine with Mike's pick as long as we get some points in the first half. Larry, there's a couple of people in the chat talking about, and I know you've got a prop for this game, but there's a couple people in the chat talking about some of the reinforcements that the Cowboys have back. We're talking about Overshown, of course, Quinnen Williams on this team now. How much of it now? They had a bye week, so we haven't really seen Quinnen Williams particularly, certainly not Overshown. How much of an impact do you think that's going to have tonight?
I mean, you get both starting safeties back. You get Shavon Revel, you get Overshown, you get Quinnen Williams, you get Logan Wilson. It can't be worse. You know, that's the thing. They're giving up 31 points a game, 400 yards a game. Every single offense that goes against them looks like the best offense in the league. You had the extra time to prepare. So it definitely can't be worse. And I think it's going to be better. I think Gipper pointed it out that Overshown, he is a big impact player. We've seen it in the last couple of years. Him coming back is huge as well.
All right, let's transition again. Like I said, we're going to go back and forth between NBA and NFL, and we'll be answering your questions, giving out some first touchdown scores along the way. PropStarz, I know you're going to have some commentary on this game, certainly when we get to the Q&A, but you actually got a play for tonight with LaMelo Ball. Talk to me.
Indeed, Sia. Yeah, we are going to take his combination line over 33.5 points, rebounds, and assists for LaMelo versus the Raptors. Getting a big discount really on this line. Very attractive number considering LaMelo Ball both this season and the last season averages roughly 38 ish PRA per game. So getting a discount as a result of an ankle injury that cost him 5 games, but he returned to the lineup on Friday night, played 27 minutes. I expect that number to increase tonight to 32 to 34 minutes. And LaMelo is such a high usage player that he doesn't really need many more minutes to easily eclipse this number, especially in a game that should be paced up. I believe it's a 238 point total here. So I expect a pretty good environment for LaMelo here, getting a big discount on his combination line. I also like his points line, which is set at 20.5.
Mikey B, I want to transition to you. Just a general basketball question here. We're about, I guess, a few weeks through the season. Any major surprises that you think have staying power through the season? In other words, teams that are playing really well or maybe really terrible that you think is sustainable through the season? Because I'm just wondering if there are any futures out there, if there are any teams we should have our eye on that maybe in the beginning of the season we didn't.
The Pistons have been very impressive. They've been winning games even with guys. Cade Cunningham has missed some time. Jalen Duren has missed some time. So I think the Pistons are really impressive. And we've already seen that the Bulls' 6-1 start was a mirage. They're now 6-6. Second game of a back-to-back set tonight. They're playing the Nuggets, so they're probably going to be 6-7. So there's 2 teams in the Eastern Conference. So
your Chicago Bulls, they're not for real.
No, believe it or not, they're not for real. They're 500, just like we thought they were going to be. Surprise, surprise.
So, and I know you've got that pre-flop play on them, which is actually still looking pretty good. Let's talk about first touchdowns real quick. Get your stake back in cash if your first touchdown scores second instead. Bet on any pro football player to score the first touchdown of the game. And if you're right, you win. If your player scores second, you get your stake back in cash. let's talk about a SportsLine pick. And then, Ben, if you don't mind, after we do that, we'll go to a break, and then we're going to come back with our first touchdown scores. Let's do that early while we wait for some questions to come in and get to more picks. The Miami Heat, money line, -114, says Matt Severance. That one in Miami, I believe, tonight. So Miami Heat money line against the Knicks, -114. All right, we got to get to a lot more. We're going to cover it right after this message from our partners.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
We're back on the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM. Make it legendary. Larry, there's a question in the chat from Luffy Mingo, which is one of the best chat names for this show. Pickens over 24.5, longest reception. This is a tease. I don't want you to answer this right now, but you have a pick that implicates George Pickens. We're going to get to it in just a couple of minutes. Let's cover our first touchdown scores real quick first. Let's do that in the middle of the show. Ben, flash that up there. I've got Jake Ferguson at 10-1, but Larry, forget 10-1. How about 100-1?
Yeah, Jack Bech, he had 9 touchdowns. He was a second-round pick at TCU, over 1,000 yards, 17 yards per catch, and he's basically been non-existent. You know, for a second-round pick, the Raiders have done such a bad job of integrating their rookies, you know, except for Ashton Jeanty. Their next 5 rookies have yet to really make an impact, unless you count, you know, Thornton dropping the ball, committing offensive pass interference. So there has been so much talk about the need now that the season's basically over, 2-7. That was kind of that pivotal game. And it sounds like they're looking at, okay, this is the second half of the season. We're trying to build for next year now. We've got to get these rookies involved. He had a few games with like 20-something routes, but last time against Denver, only 8 routes. But this guy is super talented. He's big. He's physical. He's actually very shifty. And I think out of the extra rest, you know, that they had after that Denver game, with the season basically over, now it's time to show that, yes, we drafted some talent. Throw the ball to Jack Bech.
All right. That was quite the plea for Jack Bech. Mike McClure, you know, taking a backup tight end as a first touchdown scorer feels like the actual strategy. Talk to me about Michael Mayer.
Yeah, he's a backup tight end, but he's closer to a starting tight end if you talk about how often he's on the field and running routes, right? So it's a situation where he's certainly going to get overshadowed by Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is certainly going to be the number one option. Ashton Jeanty's still going to be an option down there as well. But I do like the Raiders and what they're going to likely continue to do, which is a little bit more of that 12 personnel.
Yeah.
Again, he's a backup tight end. 22-1 here, but still out there around 62% of the time, which is a pretty healthy number again for a backup tight end. I like Michael Mayer here. I think that he's going to continue to see 5+ targets pretty much each week the rest of the way, potentially more later in the game. Obviously, I know we're looking at first touchdown scores here, but I do expect him to be out there, and I do think that Dallas could have some troubles defensively early still.
Yeah, backup tight end is probably just a bad way for me to put that, since he's on the field as much as he is. Just the second tight end in command, if you will. Trey Tucker, PropStarz, is I don't know what to refer to Trey Tucker as, because he feels like the guy that's going to stretch the field that should get more targets. He's just not getting a ton. Either way, 14-1. Talk to me.
Yeah, he is the team's wide receiver one after Jacoby Myers was traded to the Jaguars. So functioning as that wide receiver one, he does have a healthy amount of red zone targets. So just considering his role in the offense, the likelihood the Raiders will be passing the ball, we'll take a shot on Trey Tucker.
And Mikey B, you like Trey Tucker as well?
I do. The Cowboys have allowed 16 touchdowns to wide receivers this season, which is the most in the NFL, and they haven't even played their Week 11 game yet. So that's why I picked Trey Tucker.
All right, Trey Tucker at 14-1. I think Trey Tucker over 44-ish yards is an interesting one. That might be something I look to live play if the Cowboys establish an early lead. Let's get to some more picks. So I'm going to start with mine. I've got a kind of a finicky bet here that you can find pretty much everywhere. It's the halftime full-time wager. So sometimes you can look under game lines and scroll down, and that's where you will see this bet. I want to take the Cowboys, but I don't want to take them at -3.5. It looks like it's trending towards bouncing back down to -3 at some point today, and that's where I'm waiting to take the Cowboys at -3. Instead, for now, for purposes of this show, I'm going to take the even money play on Cowboys to win the halftime, or be winning at halftime, I should say, and to win the game outright without having to consider the spread here. Obviously, it's a little dicey. I think the Cowboys are going to win this game. It's a little dicey to take that halftime play because, frankly, this thing could be tied and then the bet loses, right? For the record, if you want to go tie Cowboys, it's 15-1. If you want to spread a little bit of an insurance of 0.1 unit here. But no, I'm going to take Cowboys here, halftime, full time, because I just think they are the better team, especially when you consider what Larry Hartstein just said about the reinforcements that are coming back on that defense. I don't think you can really overstate the impact of not just Overshown being back and some of that secondary being healthy, but Quinnen Williams on the defensive line, I think, is a really, really big deal. You look at the offense, I don't see the Raiders stopping the Cowboys offense. I think we're going to see a lot of Javonte, but I think Dak is going to be very successful with his two primary receivers. And then let's add the fact that I'm playing doctor here a little bit, but there was a quad contusion that Geno Smith had last game, and it looked really bad. I'm shocked he even played the game. He practiced. He says he's fine, but I'm not ruling out the idea that Geno Smith could have an aggravation of that quad contusion that was just a week ago on prime time. So that's another thing I feel like is a feather in the cap of taking the Cowboys, is that the backup is Kenny Pickett. I'm not saying Kenny Pickett's going to play tonight, but I am saying that it's possible that Geno Smith is coming back a touch too early from that quad contusion that didn't look very good last week. So just throwing that in there is just a little bit extra, but either way, I think the Cowboys are going to be winning at halftime and be winning the full game. When this is at -3, I'll probably be putting that into SportsLine. It's just 3.5 right now, and I didn't want to give that out. All right, let's transition. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, no, I like that. The Cowboys O-line fully healthy. The Raiders lost Jackson Powers-Johnson last game, and now facing, hopefully a better and stronger Cowboys D-line.
Let's go to your pick, Larry, because there was that question from Luffy Mingo about George Pickens over 24.5 longest reception. Now, I'll point out, I kind of like Dak Prescott's over longest completion, 36.5, which I do think implicates this play. But you have a play on Pickens yards.
Yeah, I mean, Pickens continues to get treated as not quite a number one receiver when he basically is putting up number one receiver numbers. He's over 66.5, which I think you can even find a little better than this. I thought it was going to go up when I got it, but you can find a little better than this, maybe 64.5. He's gone over this 4 straight, 7 of 8. The Raiders play cover 3 at the second highest rate. This is a coverage that he has absolutely destroyed. There's a rookie corner out there, Darian Porter, who has not forced an incompletion yet this season that Pickens is going to see a lot of. That kid gives up more than 12 yards per catch. So I just think that everything sets up for the Cowboys to have a very big passing game. We saw the Raiders very strong against the run. They're actually number 2 right now in yards per carry allowed. So they've been decent against the run. Where you have to attack them is with the pass, which sets up beautifully for George Pickens.
All right, George Pickens over 66.5 receiving yards. I don't know, Larry, did you comment on this? Do you like the longest reception of 24.5?
Yeah, I like that a lot,
Okay.
but as somebody who got burned last night taking A.J. Brown over on his longest catch, and, he can't be bothered to run the route. I mean, I should have known better. He can't be bothered to actually finish the route when he did get a deep chance. But tonight, yeah, I think tonight you have perfect conditions. You don't have the wind or the cold, and you have George Pickens. So, yeah, I like that.
Proppy, there have been, listen, officials get things wrong all the time. They just miss things, and that's just going to happen. It's human error.
That was sick.
But you, as an Eagles fan, PropStarz, you have to agree with the sentiment that was one of the worst pass interference calls that you've ever seen, correct? At the end of the game?
Sure.
Okay. You're not indignant about it, it doesn't make you mad, as an NFL fan?
I mean, that happens over the course of the season. I just feel anytime you have human beings officiating, there's going to be poor judgment calls, and that's just the nature of officiating.
Larry, what's so egregious about the call isn't that they missed a call, a non-pass interference. It's that if you were going to throw a flag, it would have been on the offensive player. In that spot, it's crazy to me. Your response?
Yeah, and after watching a pretty, drudgery game on Sunday Night Football, we had a chance for some late drama if they don't throw that flag, and we were denied that drama.
The look on Rock Yassine's face really said it all, because everybody does it. Even when you commit pass interference, the defenders are always like, no, I didn't. But That one was just like, no, you got to be kidding me. I'm sure there's some reaction in the chat on that too. We got a lot more football to get to, but Mikey B, you've got 2 NBA picks for us.
2 picks from the Knicks and Heat game. First, we're going to do Norman Powell over 25.5 points. He had 38 points against these same Knicks on Friday. He took 22 shots. 15 of them came from behind the arc. He also played them in October. In that game, he had 29 points. Bam Adebayo is out again Monday, so we got a lot of extra shots here for Norman Powell. The Heat have played at the fastest pace in the league. The Knicks are without one of their best defenders in OG Anunoby, so I like Powell to go over 25.5 points. And then on the Knicks side of things, Jordan Clarkson over 15.5 points. Talked about Anunoby being out. Well, so is Jalen Brunson. Even Miles McBride is listed as questionable of the game with a personal matter. The Knicks had no depth last year, so if they didn't have Brunson and Anunoby in a game, they barely could stay competitive. Well, that's not the case this year. They've got Clarkson, with Clarkson coming with Anunoby leaving that game early on Friday. Clarkson had 24 points, played 33 minutes. He's averaged at least 16 points a game in each of the last 5 seasons. So I think he plays around 30 minutes in this game against an up-tempo Heat team, and he goes over 15.5 points.
I saw a comment. I'm looking at some of the questions that we got to get answered in the NBA and NFL, but I saw a comment that this game should have been flexed. Larry, any comments there? I mean, we've got 2 weeks in a row with the Raiders in primetime.
Yeah, I mean, there have been some strange primetime games. I feel like we've seen the Giants way too often in primetime spots. Next week you get Carolina, San Francisco. That's not bad. 6-5 versus 7-4. But yeah, this happens. I think it's actually a pretty interesting game because, you have the potential for a lot of points. You have perfect conditions. I think it's the highest total on the board. So you do have a chance for some fireworks.
Mike, I want to ask you a question. It's a prop related question from Kevin Charles. I want to get your opinion here. And then if anybody else wants to chime in, prop stars, feel free. Ashton Genty, over under. So Kevin's just asking the questions. What do we like? The over or under on 63.5 rushing yards. Mike, I'll tell you that the rushing prop in terms of the rush attempts for Ashton Genty, because this is something I looked at before the show, is 17.5. So we're looking at a lot of volume, and you're a guy that likes the Raiders to at least compete, at least for the first half, based on what you have with their first half point total. 63.5, even with reinforcements for the Cowboys, it doesn't sound like a ton. Do you have a take on this?
I still lean under in this spot. I just think the way that you beat the Dallas Cowboys is throwing the football, and I think that Dallas is going to have success offensively. And I think they're just going to be in kind of those obvious passing situations more often than not. So if Genty does get there, I would speculate that it needs to be, a 10, 15, 20-yard run early in this game that ultimately pushes this over. Otherwise, I don't think that he's going to get there. In fact, I'd be more likely, I see it in the chat, I'd actually be more likely to back Genty on a touchdown market than I would on his over in yards.
Oh, that's really interesting. I don't mind that at all because that's certainly going to be plus money. Prop stars, any thoughts on this?
No real thoughts. Genty's frustrating. Obviously, high expectations. People thought he would be the next LaDainian Tomlinson coming into the NFL. Is working behind an offensive line that hasn't done him many favors. The volume's been there, but yeah, it's been tough sledding for Genty. Really not showing a lot of bursts. So I think the number's efficient, really. Even in a soft matchup against the Cowboys, I think it would require a lot of rushing attempts and. Yeah, just not something I'm comfortable to play. I also lean under if I had to choose a side.
Larry, speaking of volume, Steve Folkert says Tyler Lockett over 26.5 receiving yards is minus 110. And listen, he's not a volume monster, but he's certainly getting some volume. And obviously his relationship with Geno Smith and Pete Carroll dates back to their days in Seattle where they played together a ton. I feel like we're just constantly looking off Tyler Lockett when maybe we should be looking at him.
Yeah, I believe he shattered this in his, in the game last week. And he obviously trusts him and he doesn't really trust the rookies and the rookies are not getting, but I think that transition has to happen and will start to happen this week. But yeah, if you forced me, I would lean over just because I do think it's going to be a high scoring passing game on both sides.
Trey Creamer says Trey Tucker over 3.5 yards, first quarter minus 115. Mikey B, you're a Trey Tucker guy tonight. I know PropStarz is, at least with respect to the first touchdown. Do you ever play these first quarter markets?
I don't, but Trey, I love that. Look at Trey with Trey here. You know, there are two Treys going at it. Yeah, I love that. That's a great pick there. I'd take that over.
I don't hate it. That's an interesting one. All right, let's get to some basketball. Proppy and Mikey B, we have you here for that. Jacob Poeltl, points and rebounds over 21.5. Jake, this is from Jake Long, or Jay Long, I should say, minus 114. Mikey B, anything here?
Yeah, I would lean the over there, but I will say the Hornets have been much better in the middle. Ryan Kalkbrenner has really helped them with their rebounding. They're one of the better rebounding teams in the league, but their defense overall isn't very good. So I would probably lean over there.
All right, Max Christie, points and rebounds over 14.5, minus 110. Any thoughts there, Mikey B?
I mean, I don't really have a strong opinion on that one either way. I don't really want to bet Max Christie props. I would probably lean under on that simply because his role can fluctuate from night to night. Jay Long, let's stay away from that one. Let's go back to something else.
All right, we're going to go back to something else. This is kind of random. W Main the G says, gentlemen and chat, how do we feel about Con Knipple under 3.5 threes tonight? PropStarz, do you have any thoughts on Con Knipple under threes?
I don't.
Yeah, Mikey B?
So I would lean under there simply because LaMelo is going to play. Like Proppy's on the LaMelo thing. When LaMelo is out, Con Knipple is awesome. I mean, he's 20 points a night. He's a very efficient shooter, especially from behind the arc too. So I can see why you might think maybe, but 3.5 is a big number. I would lean towards the under on that.
You know what I didn't point out, Larry, is that our Splash Sports contest, we got a lot of people in it. I mean, honestly, I think we can, if we're doing this next week, and I'm not even sure if we are, I think we could get to 1,000, but we had well over 600 that joined on short notice. It's actually pretty good. Ben, do you have the graphic? There are two people, Larry, that are tied for first, and I'm not sure what their pick is for tonight, Larry. I know you were looking at that, and I don't know if you had it verified, but the John A is tied for first right now with looks like Ki Hong, KHL 33, 333.86. Larry, the John A, I think, has won our FFT DFS contest that me, Mike, and Meg shopped to. I'm pretty sure that name is familiar from that, but 10-2 against the spread is pretty great.
Yeah, 10-2 against the spread. It looks like both are on the Raiders tonight, so I'm not sure if one of them selected it for their best pick. Maybe that would be the tiebreaker, but congrats to them. And, of course, a lot more people are going to get paid down the board because there's 1,000 total in prizes. And, yeah, it was a great turnout, and we hope to keep doing them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's see. I don't know if we have many more questions here. PropStarz, did you see anything in the chat? And Larry, I'll go to you.
Nothing in the chat, but shout out to the chat.
Shout out to the chat. Larry, what you got?
Yeah, I'm just curious where you guys are in terms of Brock Bowers tonight. I mean, one catch last week, only 3 targets, but he's healthy. He's the best player on this offense. The numbers are pretty high, though. 6.5 for catches. You got to go over. For plus money, you can go over. And then in the 70s, low 70s, low to mid 70s for receiving yards. And the Cowboys have been decent against tight ends. They haven't been shredded by them, but maybe they haven't faced Brock Bowers. So I just wanted to see where you guys are on him. Yeah,
I'm seeing BetMGM has it at 71.5. That, if you like the over, that's the best bet you've got, because a lot of places, to your point, Larry, have 73, 74. PropStarz, have we seen a line that, like Trey McBride, that's usually in the high 60s when it's an inflated line. Is this the highest you've seen this year, just from memory?
For a tight end, I believe it is. But Brock Bowers, certainly deservingly so. Larry mentioned last week's performance, but that was against a Denver defense that's arguably the best defense in the NFL, certainly top 3. And they went to great lengths to stop Brock Bowers. Now facing a Dallas defense, obviously nowhere close to the same personnel or system. So I do anticipate this is a great environment for Brock Bowers. I actually lean over on all of his props.
All right. Mike McClure, any thoughts on Brock Bowers tonight?
Be overs or nothing for me. I expect a much bigger workload. The 3 targets last week was largely a product of the way the Denver Broncos played. So, yeah, I don't think Dallas has the ability or really even the desire to try to take him out that way, just because of how they set up defensively. So, yeah, give me Bowers. I actually think that there's room to go over on his receptions in this one. I think there'll be opportunity late where he'll have that drive with 3 or 4 catches on one drive.
Another big name that we didn't bring up, Larry, that has a very similar prop, but instead of receiving, it's rushing, is Javonte Williams, who I will tell you again, rushing attempts is in that 17 to 18.5 range, which is a lot, obviously. 75.5, pretty much universally across the board. BetMGM and other books, 75.5 is his rushing yard total. Larry, you first, and then PropStarz.
I'm going to lean under on his attempts because that's a big number to get to 18 attempts because the Raiders, they are pretty stiff against the run. And I think if the Cowboys were smart, they're going to come out throwing the ball. So I'm going to lean under on his attempts.
Proppy, what are your thoughts on this?
Javonte really struggling from an efficiency standpoint in recent weeks. Got off to a good start. I look at Javonte and I just don't think he's running as well as he was early in the year. It looks a little worn down to me. So I think this is a more difficult matchup than it may appear at first glance. And I do think the Cowboys will opt to be pass heavy. That being said, from a volume standpoint, he may end up getting there if he does get 18 to 20 touches, which is certainly within his range of outcomes. The Cowboys are one of the fastest teams in the NFL. They average 25 seconds per play. That ranks top 3, if I'm not mistaken. So volume certainly on his side here, but I do expect Dallas to throw the ball effectively. So we'll see.
Yeah, I lean to the volume as well. And it's mostly because I don't know that they trust Jaden Blue. I just feel like Javonte is going to be on the field because that's who they trust, especially when the game is still hanging in the balance. Okay, last question here. It's a DFS question. Listen, Mike, I don't know if you've run any DFS, but Bowers in the captain spot. How do you feel about that?
I think it'll definitely be in consideration tonight. Certainly haven't run everything there yet, but do like Bowers a lot. He'll be heavily involved.
So Joey B says, this is for you, PropStarz, before we get to the recap screen. He says, is the chat allowed to refer to PropStarz as Proppy, as Sia just did?
Absolutely, yeah. I am Proppy. I've had people come up to me in person and call me that. So absolutely. And if you don't think me, feel free to call me that as well.
All right. I guess we're done answering most of the questions in the chat. Let's take a look at the recap screen before we get everybody out of here. So I'm on the Cowboys halftime, full time. In other words, they got to be winning at halftime. They got to be winning at full time. There's no spread involved. This one is even money. George Pickens over 66.5 receiving yards, -115. That one courtesy of Larry Hartstein. Mike McClure going with the Raiders first half team total over 10.5 at -105. PropStarz, LaMelo Ball over 33.5 points, rebounds, and assists at -105. And then Mikey B, Norman Powell over 25.5 points, -111. And Jordan Clarkson over 15.5 points at -107. Miami Heat money line -114. Miami hosting the Knicks tonight. That one courtesy of Matt Severance. And then, of course, here's our first touchdown scores. Both PropStarz and Mikey B are on Trey Tucker. Michael Mayer from Mike McClure at 22-1. Jack Besh at 100-1 from Larry Hartstein. And I'm going with a bit of chalk, but it still gets me in the club, folks. Jake Ferguson, first touchdown score at 10-1. All right, Liddy says it all. He says, have a good day, y'all. Larry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying if Jack Besh scores the first touchdown, it will also be his first touchchdown in the NFL.
Yeah, oh, that's right. Is it like it almost feels like it'll be his first catch in the NFL? I don't need the play.
He has a few catches. He's been on the field.
You know who I thought of just to be kind of like you, Larry, was Spanford, the tight end 3. Like he gets basically no targets, but he's on the field for like 10 snaps a game. And it would just be hilarious if somebody like that. Schoonmaker was, I think, like 45-50-1. Spanford was in that 100-1 range. If you want to sprinkle something ridiculous like that, which I do not recommend. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get out of here. Have a great day. We're going to be on CBS Sports Network at 12 o'clock. To break down Monday Night Football even further, but also look ahead at some other lines for, I guess, what we're going into week 12, right, folks? We're going into week 12. And then, of course, Emery and Tom are going to join us for FCS Group of 5 bets at the end of that show. So a lot going on at 12 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. Make sure you join us. Big thank you to M3 Baller, Joe Neuenfeld, Patrick Hilliard, Dano, Jadell is in here, Liddy, of course, Jason Pogwis, Bruce Green. Thanks for Mutandas. I wish I could say everybody's Nick Gippers picks. Thanks for being in here every day. Really appreciate you hitting the like button, but more importantly, participating in this chat. Big thank you to Larry, PropStarz, Mikey B, and Mike McClure. And of course, Ben on the 1s and 2s and 6s and 7s. We'll see you next time on The Early Edge. We rest our case.